Welcome. Tonight, we begin with a simple but unsettling idea. History is not as complete as it appears. When we open a history book, it often feels solid and confident, filled with dates, names, and clear explanations. But behind those pages lies a quieter truth. Much of the past has reached us only in fragments. Documents were lost to time, destroyed by fire, or quietly set aside. Entire stories were never written down at all. What survives is often shaped by power. Victors recorded their achievements. Institutions preserved what supported their authority. Meanwhile, countless details about everyday lives, forgotten places, and inconvenient events slowly faded away. Over generations, absence became normal, and unanswered questions became footnotes. This is why so many historical mysteries still exist today. Not because people failed to search, but because the evidence itself no longer speaks clearly. A missing document, a sealed archive, a ruined site each creates space for doubt. And in that space, curiosity grows. Sometimes, these gaps are accidental. Time is cruel to paper and memory. Other times, silence feels intentional. Certain records were restricted, delayed, or never meant to be seen beyond a select few. We may never know where the line truly lies. Tonight's story lives within those gaps. It is about what history remembers, and what it quietly leaves behind. As we move forward, we will explore treasures that were never found, texts that cannot be read, and events that resist simple explanation. So, take a moment, settle in, and let us begin, not with answers but with the questions history never resolved. Throughout history, stories of hidden treasures have quietly survived long after the people who buried them disappeared. These are not just legends told for excitement. Many are supported by court records, eyewitness accounts, and unfinished maps. And yet, despite centuries of searching, the treasures themselves remain missing. Pirates, explorers, and wartime leaders often hid valuable goods with the belief that they would one day return. Some were captured. Some were killed. Others simply vanished. Their secrets went with them. What remains are clues that never quite connect, partial directions, symbols carved into stone, or references buried in old letters. What makes these lost treasures so compelling is not only their value, but their silence. Searchers have dug, scanned, and mapped countless locations using modern technology. In many cases, they found signs of deliberate misdirection, false tunnels, flooded chambers, or markers designed to confuse anyone who came later. These were not careless hiding places. They were carefully planned disappearances. Over time, the line between history and myth becomes thin. Each failed search raises new questions. Was the treasure already removed? Was it never there at all? Or is it still waiting, untouched, beneath layers of earth and time? Lost treasures remind us that history does not always offer closure. Some stories end without conclusions, leaving only traces behind. And perhaps that is why they endure, because they represent unfinished chapters, quietly challenging the idea that everything important from the past has already been found. In the silence beneath the ground, history continues to withhold its answers. Not all hidden treasures were buried simply to protect riches. In many cases, concealment served a deeper purpose, one tied to power, fear, and survival. Gold and precious objects were often symbols of authority, and losing them meant losing influence. During times of war or political collapse, leaders and institutions rushed to hide valuable assets, not knowing who would control the future. Some treasures were moved repeatedly, each transfer leaving behind fewer witnesses. Others were concealed under strict secrecy, shared only among a small inner circle. When those people disappeared, the knowledge vanished with them. In certain historical records, treasure appears not as loot, but as leverage. Wealth could fund armies, buy loyalty, or secure safe passage. Hiding it was a way to pause history, to delay defeat, or to prepare for a return that never came. Over time, these plans failed, but the hiding places remained. There are also cases where treasures may have been concealed to keep them out of public reach entirely. Valuable objects linked to sensitive events, disputed claims, or uncomfortable truths were sometimes removed from sight. In those moments, Hiding wealth also meant hiding stories. This raises an important question: what exactly was meant to be protected, the material itself, or the meaning attached to it? When we search for lost treasures, we often imagine coins and jewels. But sometimes, what was hidden mattered far more than its monetary value. These buried objects may represent unfinished struggles, lost ambitions, or attempts to control how history would be remembered. And so, beneath the surface, treasure becomes something more than wealth. It becomes a quiet record of fear, intention, and unanswered resolve waiting, perhaps, not to be found, but to be understood. Some locations connected to historical mysteries appear to have been designed not to protect what was hidden, but to discourage discovery entirely. These sites reveal signs of careful planning, as if their creators expected future intruders and prepared obstacles in advance. Across different parts of the world, explorers have encountered unusual underground structures, narrow passages, sealed chambers, and systems that redirect water or collapse when disturbed. These features suggest knowledge of engineering far beyond simple hiding. They were meant to delay, mislead, or exhaust anyone who tried to reach the center. What makes these places especially puzzling is their complexity. Constructing such systems required time, resources, and skilled labor. This raises a quiet question: why invest so much effort unless what was being protected was considered extremely important? In many cases, these locations offer hints but no clear conclusions. Symbols carved into stone appear to mark progress, yet lead nowhere. Shafts descend only to flood without warning. Some passages seem to exist solely to waste time. Each discovery feels intentional, as though the site itself is telling a story but in a language we no longer understand. Over generations, repeated failures have transformed these places into symbols of persistence and frustration. Modern tools have improved our reach, but the original designs continue to resist easy answers. These locations challenge a simple idea of history. They suggest that people in the past did not only hide objects, they anticipated the future. They planned for curiosity, greed, and determination. And in doing so, they created spaces that blur the line between architecture and message. In the end, these places do not merely conceal what lies beneath them. They remind us that some parts of history were meant to remain difficult, guarded not by distance or time, but by deliberate design. Throughout history, knowledge has depended on fragile things: paper, ink, memory, and care. When great centers of learning collapsed, their knowledge often disappeared with them. Fires, wars, neglect, and time erased works that had taken generations to create. Ancient libraries and schools once collected writings on science, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy. These places were not just buildings, but living networks of scholars who shared and debated ideas. When they were damaged or abandoned, entire lines of thought ended abruptly. What makes this loss especially striking is how little we know about what vanished. In many cases, we only have references, titles mentioned in other texts, or brief quotations copied centuries later. The original works are gone, leaving us to imagine what they may have contained. Some historians believe that certain discoveries were made far earlier than we realize, only to be forgotten and later rediscovered. Without the original records, it becomes impossible to trace progress accurately. History, in these moments, develops gaps that no later effort can fully repair. These losses remind us that knowledge is not permanent. It must be protected, shared, and renewed. When societies fail to do so, even the most advanced ideas can fade into silence. As we move forward in this story, it becomes clear that many mysteries are not created by secrets, but by absence. What was lost cannot speak for itself. And yet, its silence continues to shape our understanding of the past, quietly reminding us of how much once existed, and how little remains. Not all lost knowledge has disappeared completely. Some of it still exists, resting quietly in archives and collections around the world. The words remain on the page, the ink still visible, yet their meaning has slipped beyond our reach. These texts are written in languages no longer spoken, or in systems of symbols that resist interpretation. Scholars have studied them for decades, comparing patterns, testing theories, and applying modern technology. Still, the texts remain silent. They neither confirm nor deny the ideas projected onto them. What makes these works so unsettling is their clarity of form. They appear structured, intentional, and complete. Illustrations follow rules. Sentences repeat with variation. Everything suggests purpose. And yet, understanding never arrives. Some believe these texts record practical knowledge, medicine, rituals, or observations of the natural world. Others argue they may be personal, symbolic, or even instructional in ways we no longer recognize. Without a key, every explanation remains uncertain. These undeciphered works sit at the edge of history. They remind us that survival does not guarantee understanding. A text can endure physically while its meaning fades entirely. In a way, these writings challenge our confidence in progress. Despite powerful tools and advanced analysis, there are limits to what can be recovered. Certain knowledge depends on cultural context, shared experience, and continuity, things that cannot always be reconstructed. As we continue, these unreadable texts stand as quiet witnesses. They tell us that the past is not only distant, but sometimes deliberately or unintentionally closed to us. And within their unread pages, entire worlds may still be waiting, forever present, yet forever unknown. While some historical knowledge was lost by accident, other records still exist but remain beyond public reach. Around the world, powerful institutions maintain vast archives filled with documents, correspondence, and reports collected over centuries. These materials are carefully preserved but not always shared. Access to such archives is often limited by time restrictions, selection, or special permission. Official reasons include preservation, organization, or sensitivity. Yet these limits naturally invite questions. What stories lie within documents that cannot yet be read, and why do some records remain sealed long after the events they describe? In many cases, released materials have already changed our understanding of history. Small collections of newly opened documents have revealed overlooked perspectives, revised timelines, or previously unknown decisions. This suggests that what remains closed may hold even greater significance. These archives remind us that history is not only discovered, it is managed. Decisions about what to reveal and when shape how the past is understood. Silence, in this context, becomes a form of influence. For historians and the public alike, closed archives represent both promise and frustration. They suggest that answers may exist, stored neatly on shelves, while remaining just out of reach. As we continue this journey, these hidden records stand as a quiet reminder. The past is not always distant or destroyed. Sometimes, it is simply waiting, guarded by doors that have not yet been opened, and by stories that have not yet been allowed to speak. History records moments of sudden destruction that changed entire regions, yet left behind surprisingly little explanation. These events were witnessed, documented, and felt but not fully understood, even long after they occurred. In some cases, landscapes were altered in a single moment. Forests were flattened. Settlements were damaged. The force was undeniable. And yet, when investigators later searched for clear causes, the evidence seemed incomplete. No obvious source, no simple explanation that fit every detail. For the people who lived through such moments, confusion was immediate. Without scientific context, these events felt unnatural and deeply unsettling. Reports described loud sounds, intense light, or shockwaves that appeared without warning and vanished just as quickly. What makes these events especially mysterious is the gap between impact and evidence. Normally, destruction leaves clear traces. Here, the traces feel indirect effects without a clearly visible origin. This has led to ongoing discussion and careful study, even with modern tools. Over time, science has offered possible explanations, and many are reasonable. Still, uncertainty remains. Not every detail aligns perfectly. Not every question finds a satisfying answer. These moments remind us that history is shaped not only by human decisions, but also by forces that arrive without notice and leave without explanation. They sit quietly in the record, marked by dates and locations, but surrounded by open questions. As we move forward, These unexplained events show us how fragile certainty can be and how easily history can be shaken by something that arrives once, changes everything, and then disappears. History is filled with names, dates, and movements, yet some groups seem to disappear without leaving a clear trace. They are mentioned briefly in official records, and then without explanation they are gone. In some cases, these groups were military units, communities, or organized expeditions. There are no detailed accounts of defeat, no clear record of relocation, and no formal conclusion to their story. Their absence creates a silence that is difficult to explain. Normally, large groups leave behind evidence, written orders, physical remains, or follow-up reports. When none of these appear, historians are left with only fragments. A final mention in a document. A gap where a continuation should be. There are many possible explanations. Records may have been lost or destroyed. Later writers may have chosen to omit uncomfortable outcomes. Or events unfolded in ways that never reached official archives at all. What makes these disappearances so compelling is their scale. When individuals vanish, the reasons can be personal. When entire groups vanish, the cause must have been significant. Yet without documentation, significance becomes speculation. These missing groups challenge the idea that history always moves forward in a clear line. Sometimes, it simply stops recording. And when it does, we are left with questions that resist closure. As we continue, these silent disappearances remind us that history is not only a record of what happened but also a record of what was remembered. Everything else exists in the shadows, just beyond the edge of the written page. Throughout history, there have been sudden natural events that baffled those who lived through them. Entire regions could experience extreme weather, crop failures, or unusual phenomena in ways that felt completely inexplicable at the time. For the people affected, these disasters seemed almost impossible. Crops failed despite careful planting, rivers flooded without warning, or snow appeared during months normally considered warm. Daily life was disrupted, and survival became a challenge. Communities struggled to make sense of what was happening. Even today, some of these events remain partially mysterious. Modern science can often suggest causes volcanic eruptions, climate shifts, or other natural forces, but not every detail aligns perfectly with observations recorded at the time. Contemporary witnesses, lacking scientific understanding, sometimes interpreted these disasters as signs or omens, which influenced culture, politics, and religion. These events remind us that history is not only shaped by human decisions but also by nature's unpredictability. They show how environmental forces could alter societies rapidly and leave gaps in understanding. Despite centuries of study, these sudden disasters continue to fascinate. They challenge our sense of control and demonstrate that even well-documented periods of history have moments where explanation remains just out of reach. In exploring these mysterious disruptions, we see a pattern: not all events leave complete records, and not all impacts can be fully explained. History is shaped as much by what we cannot understand as by what we can. As we move closer to the present, modern tools and scientific methods have allowed historians and researchers to clarify some historical mysteries. Archaeology, forensic analysis, satellite imaging, and digital reconstruction can reveal hidden structures, confirm timelines, or even detect traces of objects once thought lost forever. Yet, even with these advances, many questions remain. Evidence can be incomplete, interpretations can differ, and some discoveries raise new puzzles rather than solving old ones. For example, uncovering a hidden chamber may confirm a location, but it may not explain who built it, why it was abandoned, or what secrets it once held. The paradox is clear: the more we discover, the more gaps appear. Technology has improved our reach into the past, but it cannot rewrite what was never recorded or restore what has been deliberately lost. Historical mysteries are therefore layered, partly solved, partly unresolved, and sometimes deliberately elusive. This ongoing tension between discovery and uncertainty is part of what makes history so fascinating. It shows that knowledge is not static. It is cumulative, fragile, and dependent on interpretation. Even today, there are mysteries that resist explanation, reminding us that the past is not a closed book. As we explore these mysteries, we learn to appreciate the limits of certainty. Science helps illuminate history, but it cannot answer every question. Some stories remain intentionally or unintentionally incomplete, leaving space for curiosity, debate, and wonder. In this way, history is both revealed and hidden at the same time, an ever-evolving puzzle that challenges us to keep looking, thinking, and questioning. After centuries of searching, studying, and debating, some historical mysteries remain unresolved. And yet, their very lack of closure is what keeps them alive in our imagination. People are drawn to unanswered questions because they invite curiosity, speculation, and storytelling. Unresolved mysteries remind us that history is not only about what we know, but also about what we do not know. Each missing document, lost treasure, or unexplained event creates a space for wonder. They challenge our understanding and force us to confront the limits of knowledge. These mysteries also connect us to the past in a personal way. We are compelled to imagine the lives of those who buried treasures, wrote secret texts, or lived through disasters. Even without answers, we feel a sense of continuity, an invisible thread linking our curiosity to centuries of human experience. The fascination is amplified by the uncertainty itself. When evidence is incomplete, possibilities multiply. Every theory, hypothesis, or interpretation opens new avenues of thought, allowing history to remain dynamic rather than fixed. In the end, unresolved mysteries serve as a reminder that history is alive. It is not merely a record of completed events, but a continuing conversation between the past and present. They teach us patience, humility, and the value of asking questions. So tonight, as we explore the treasures, texts, and events that history has left unanswered, remember this: the gaps, silences, and lost pieces are not failures, they are invitations. Invitations to wonder, investigate, and keep the story alive. History may not give us all the answers, but in its mysteries, it gives us something perhaps even more valuable: the chance to imagine. As we have seen tonight, history is full of mysteries, hidden treasures, lost knowledge, unreadable texts, unexplained events, and vanished groups. Some were lost to time, some intentionally concealed, and some remain just beyond our reach. Yet, it is precisely these unanswered questions that make the past so fascinating. They remind us that history is not just a record of what happened, but also a reflection of human curiosity, ambition, and imagination. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the secrets and silences of the past. I hope it has sparked your curiosity and reminded you that even centuries later, there is always more to explore, learn, and wonder about. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep imagining, and keep looking at history with fresh eyes. Goodbye, and see you in the next story.